Atlanta police fired Garrett Rolfe within 24 hours of the shooting of Rayshard Brooks last Friday night. 11 Alive Chief Investigator Brendan Keefe discovered this is not the first time the police department had to investigate the now fired officer for improper use of force involving a firearm.
Hey, Mr. Brooks.
2 lives are about to change forever.
How you doing? Hey, I'm Officer Rolfe of the Atlanta Police Department. How you doing?
26 minutes after Officer Garrett Rolfe started a DUI investigation of Rayshard Brooks in the Wendy's parking lot,
Put your hands behind your back.
they would be locked in a violent struggle. Officer and suspect both making split-second decisions that would end Rayshard Brooks' life. Garrett Rolfe joined the force as an academy cadet in late 2013.
The one just ran up that way.
The Reveal investigative team already had this video from the rescue of a kidnapping victim in 2016.
He just ran up this way.
Rolfe was one of the backup officers who chased the other kidnapping suspects.
We're gonna shoot you. I'm gonna shoot you. I'm gonna shoot your ass. I'm gonna shoot you.
He fired his taser but missed. In this incident, all the suspects were successfully captured and convicted, and there were no allegations of wrongdoing on the part of Officer Rolfe. But he was investigated by the APD Office of Professional Standards 12 times, according to a summary released by the department. 4 of them complaints filed by citizens against Officer Rolfe between 2015 and 2018. 1 citizen complaint was not sustained, and he was completely exonerated in the other 3. In October of 2017, APD issued a written reprimand to Officer Rolfe after Internal Affairs sustained an allegation of improper use of force involving a firearm. We don't know any of the details of these internal investigations yet because Atlanta police have so far released only a summary of Rolfe's disciplinary record.
Found him passed out in the
State records show Garrett Rolfe has received more than 2,000 hours of training in his 7-year career. And since January of this year, he's been trained in firearms, de-escalation, cultural awareness, and deadly force.
So at this point, Officer Rolfe is not charged in the shooting at Wendy's from last Friday. The Fulton County District Attorney Paul Howard says that he could make that decision as early as tomorrow. His office told 11 Alive that the 3 charges they're considering right now are murder, which would be the most serious, felony murder, and voluntary manslaughter, which would be the least serious. Today, we spoke to criminal defense attorney Bill McKinney about the case. He's not representing the officer, but he used to be a police officer in New York and served as a legal advisor to the Atlanta Police Department. He says in his experience, even the voluntary manslaughter would be hard to argue, and he questions how quickly the possible charges will be announced.
In 40 years, I've never seen a jump to judgment this quickly. Normally takes weeks and months by GBI investigators, internal affairs from the police department, and even outside agencies to look at this before they make any type of judgment, whether it's criminal, as opposed to something that could be civil or disciplinary.
And he says that Howard has argued in other cases against officers that a taser is a deadly weapon, which could potentially open the door for Rolfe to argue self-defense if he is in fact charged.